Russia finalized the evacuation of civilians from Kherson, put inexperienced new recruits on the front lines, and in the meantime, Ukrainian forces did start advancing closer to the city from all directions. Everything is ready for the major battle of the south, the battle for Kherson. And if Putin loses it, it will be most likely the end for him. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage from around Ukraine. And our first picture comes to us from Kiev, where we can see that city is following the energy savings protocols. Because if you remember, Russia reportedly destroyed approximately 40% of energy infrastructure of Ukraine. And that is why the authorities are urging people to only use electricity when absolutely necessary. Next we go to Donetsk, where we can see Chechen soldiers, Kadyrovцы, stealing from the house of a local resident. And I mean, what kind of protection of the people of Donbass Russia is talking about when the soldiers are stealing from allegedly their own people? The video is 10 minutes long, so I obviously cannot show it all here, but if you want to see the full version, the link will be down below. And finally, we go to Odessa, where we can see anti-aircraft gun tank Gepard intercepting several Shahid drones. Alright, and now let's talk about the most recent developments in Ukraine's counteroffensive in the east, and while I'm going there, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel if you like this style of daily updating. I will also have a charitable livestream this Sunday, October 30th at 7 PM Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to ask some questions in advance, feel free to do it in my Instagram. Okay, and now let's go back to the east. And on this map, presented to us by the Institute for the Study of War, we can see the most significant fighting in the last 24 hours. And as you can see, the biggest combats are happening next to Lysychansk, Bakhmut and Mariinka. The same report claims that Ukrainians are conducting their counteroffensive already next to Kreminna-Lysychansk line. And as you can see, this area is located right here. And the battle for Lysychansk and Severodonetsk is expected to be one of the most important battles in the east in the nearest future. In addition to that, according to Sergei Gaidai, the Svatovo-Kreminna road is practically under Ukrainian control. In my previous videos, I was already talking about that Ukrainians will most likely recapture this highway. And I was also emphasizing several times the importance for this road for Russians as their main resupply logistics inside Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. It is just that right now, this information is almost official, we're just waiting for the confirmation from the General Staff of Ukraine. And hopefully next week we will see some footage from these liberated territories. I also recently received this brand new intercepted phone calls of Russians who talk about this special kind of forces who prevent Russians from retreating. And the way they do it is by eliminating those who are trying to escape. So it's like Russian soldiers have two options: go forward and be faced by Ukrainians, or go back and be most certainly faced by Russians. And neither of these options sound good. And if you want to hear the full version of these phone calls, which are translated, please consider checking my Patreon. The proceeds will be donated to Ukraine, and you can find all the useful links down below. Alright, and now let's talk about the major part of the video, the upcoming battle for Kherson, which will determine the fate of the entire south and most likely Putin's presidency. And this time we have this extremely interesting map presented to us by the BBC, which relies on the resources inside the Institute for the Study of War. And as you can see, these big chunks of land represent the territories where Russia is losing control, which basically means, and it is not yet reflected by this specific map, that Ukraine did start advancing next to Dochany, Davidov Brid, and especially to the northwest of Kherson. In my previous videos, I also made the assumptions that Ukrainians might liberate Berislav and cross Dnipro River in Kakhovka region. And the next direction for these specific forces will be to approach Kherson from the south. And so far as you can see, the events have been set in motion, which means that the battle for Kherson is coming very soon. And Russians realize this as well. That is why they made a statement that they finalized the evacuation of civilians from Kherson. According to them, approximately 70,000 civilians have been deported to the left side of Dnipro River, and now they are preparing for this inevitable battle. And one of the things they did is that they placed these brand new, inexperienced recruits on the first lines of defense. I mean, seriously? What this man who had less than 1 month's training can do, especially in one of the hottest places right now, in the front lines of Kherson. I kinda suspected that the value of human life in the Russian army was pretty low, but this thing just beats everything else. We even have some reports by the local residents in Kherson who are saying that the Russian soldiers are extremely worried how they're going to survive inside the city. And so, as you can see, the morale of Russian soldiers is extremely low. They have inexperienced people in the front lines, and the officers and other important people abandon them inside the city. And those collaborators and generals who did escape, they went as far as to Lysychansk, which is, as you can see, is approximately 200 kilometers away from Kherson city. But one good thing about this is that now Ukrainians at least know where they are hiding. And so, as a result of all this, I think it is relatively safe to say that sooner or later the entire Kherson region will be liberated, and those Russians remaining in this area will be either eliminated or taken as prisoners of war. But the main question here is Kherson really that important for Russians? And the answer is, it is extremely important, because as soon as Ukraine retakes Kherson, they will most likely initiate the liberation of the rest of the south, leaving Crimean Peninsula isolated once again and making it the potential target for future deoccupation. These are just my immediate assumptions, but believe me, there are way more benefits for Ukrainians to liberate Kherson as soon as possible. First of all, according to this article, Russia can forget about capturing Mykolaiv and Odessa and restricting Ukraine's access to the Black Sea. In addition to that, Russia won't be able to establish this corridor to Transnistria, where some other Russian military bases are located. Next thing, according to the military expert Oleg Zhdanov, is that as soon as Ukraine establishes the control over Kherson region, they will be able to disrupt Russian logistics in the south, which mainly comes from Crimea. In addition to that, Ukrainians will be able to cut freshwater supplies to Crimea, which will most certainly create some criticism to Putin from the perspective of just regular civilians. And because of this, Russians will do everything possible to retain the control over Kherson, or at least they'll be ordered to do everything possible. And such difficult decisions might include destroying Kakhovka hydro plant and its dam to flood the entire region. Or in the worst case scenario, they might even consider wiping the city of Kherson from the face of the earth. You can access all the maps that I was drawing today for free in our Discord. The link will be down below. Okay, here is a very quick summary and what it all means for the future of Putin. As you can see, the battle for Kherson is inevitable and it is set to happen in the very nearest future. But the good thing about this is that Ukrainians have a much bigger chances of winning. Ukrainian soldiers with several months of actual combat experience behind their back, equipped with the most modern NATO weapons, will be facing these new recruits which have absolutely no experience and are told to defend the retreat of their officers and generals. As of now, Ukrainians resume their advancement in Kherson, but some areas are relatively slow because of the rain season and some vehicles are simply stuck in the mud. But sooner or later they will reach the borders of the city, destroy the defenses of Russians and recapture Kherson. And besides losing illegally annexed territories, Putin will also lose his last remaining points as a political leader. The Kremlin will receive criticism and lose the support of the last group of Russians who still support this war. And at the same time, the last friends of Russia, such as China, India, Iran, and I guess North Korea, will see Russia losing in Kherson as a major sign of weakness. And most likely, the inevitable defeat of Russians in Kherson will be the defeat of Putin himself. If you want to support my work, please consider becoming my channel member. All the other useful links can be found to my right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you on Sunday during charitable livestream at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.